what I want to talk about really is what does the future look, what could the future look like from a development perspective with regard to the future architecture. And this is a bit of a story that we went through with Aegon Life in India, but this story could be anywhere. Back in 2017, we wanted to build a reusable digital insurance ecosystem that was fully enabled in the cloud, that was based around a microservice event-driven architecture that could evolve to meet the business strategy. That's a big sentence, but what we had learned was that a lot of the commercial insurance products were really what we were concerned to be monoliths, or black boxes. And what we wanted to do was demystify the insurance platform. And what we wanted to do was to basically start to build an architecture that would evolve with us. So our legacy footprint would be as small as possible as we go forward. So reducing legacy was a key driver for us as we went through this. And what we wanted to do was to basically build an architecture or technical structures that would allow us to move from being centered around technical building blocks to being centered around business building blocks. And we wanted to have it so we'd be crafting business requirements to designing a digital business. And what that really means is we wanted to have very simple microservices that would do one thing from a business perspective, and we then join those things together. And what we came up with was this notion that in order to do that, you needed 4 key things. The first one was obviously the experience and the knowledge to build that event-driven architecture. And for us, that meant hiring our own resources, bringing on board very strong technical resources that had the capabilities to actually do this. Now, having strong technical capabilities and very strong people, it's not possible to do that unless you're building the right engineering culture. So building those right engineering practices was very important to us. So those 2 things together is a great starting point. But what you need in order to do this is to have those building blocks available to you. And we looked to 2 partners to do that. One was obviously AWS. AWS gives us those core building blocks that allow us to build rapidly at speed that perhaps weren't available 4 or 5 years ago. And I think today, if you go and look at the catalog that's available in AWS, it covers just about everything. It's no longer about infrastructure. It's about all those core technical services that we need to build whatever it is we're going to need. And they all come with a pay-as-you-go service. You can scale up, scale down, scale horizontally, scale vertically, all almost automatically. So you pay for what you use. The 4th element to this, though, was that you needed to have a core policy administration system that would fit into that architecture. And what I mean by that is that I didn't want a monolithic architecture. I wanted a microservice architecture. And eBaoTech provided that for us. So you bring these 4 components together, that then gives you the ability to basically build very quickly a full insurance platform. And just, this is our architecture, but I think anybody that knows the domain-driven design, this would be very similar to them. What you're basically doing here is you're creating microservices that are based around a core business process. They do one thing and they do it very, very well, and there's no dependency on other microservices per se. So we built this architecture. And when I say it's event-driven, the key thing for us is that every time something happens within one of these core services, an event is generated, and then we can use that event to go forward. So the core architecture is all based around this sort of complex piece. And the next slide I want to just talk about really is that, for us, it was a very quick implementation for us. Way back in 2017, we launched our API gateway that was purely using AWS components. And then during 2018, we worked to make sure that we could understand the core architecture. We had to bring a team on board. We had to make sure that we understood what it meant to basically run a microservice architecture, but more importantly, one that we could run with for an extended period of time. It's a chicken and egg sort of situation here. Is how big should a microservice be? How small should a microservice be? We needed to gain that experience. So we did a few proof of concepts, and we started to hire the team. Back in the late 2018 was when we'd already looked at 16 insurance platforms, and we had basically whittled that 16 platforms down to 2 platforms. And in the January of 2019, we basically signed the contract with eBaoTech. 6 weeks later, we actually launched our first group platform with a very large e-commerce player in India. So in a 6-week period, we'd gone from signing a contract with eBaoTech to actually launching a group platform. And then 6 months later, we launched our retail platform for retail products. These are life products, life insurance products. And the reason I'm sort of telling this story is that it's now possible to build that core infrastructure, that core architecture, using these building blocks that are available from AWS and then also from eBaoTech. I think Martin will talk about it in his presentation, but eBaoTech gives you that functionality. You can pick and choose which parts of eBaoTech you want to use. And it allows you then to seamlessly join this together to get to the platform that is required to support your business. And it's been a really good relationship we've had with both AWS and with eBaoTech. And I think that's the cornerstone of this, is now you're working with new age technology partners that can really help you accelerate your program. So yeah, so that was our story, that's our journey. I'm more than happy to take questions at the end of this if people have got specific things they'd like to ask.
Dougie, you mentioned you didn't want to buy another monolithic type system. You wanted to go microservices. Yep. Could you tell me why you were looking at that approach? Because there's still a lot of monolithic solutions out there. In fact, most solutions are monolithic. So
the key thing for me is that I looked at legacy. I spent a huge part of my career having to deal with legacy. And you think when you write a life insurance product, that product is potentially going to sit in a system for 50, 60 odd years. So long after you and I are long gone, those policies are still sitting there. And we've had to deal with those. And those cost huge amounts of dollars to many organizations to unravel that. And it's killing a lot of organizations. And worst of all, it's actually killing the consumer, because that cost gets passed on. So, for me, what we were trying to do here was, can we use new technology to build things in a different way, but don't drag that huge oil tanker behind you of legacy. Keep that legacy as light as possible. That was one of the key things that's in my head now. 10 years from now, I'll be asking myself, where is that legacy? So when you get to the microservice type of event, you can, in our world, we've got Java 8, Java 11, we're using Kotlin, where sometimes we're using serverless, sometimes we're using containers. It doesn't really matter. You can keep evolving that technology to support what's ever evolving. And that's part of the challenge my team have, is that evolution has got to continue. We invest probably a significant proportion of our run rate on that evolution piece to keep ourselves and keep that legacy footprint as small as possible. So
that's interesting. So you didn't upgrade your current legacy. You didn't go get another monolithic type system, but you're still running some sort of legacy back in your back end, aren't you? You didn't eliminate your entire legacy platform in just a matter of 6 weeks, right?
No, what I'm saying is we were able to launch a new platform in 6 weeks.
Right.
Yeah, that was the key bit for us.
And you're offering new products within the platform, or are you offering existing products that you had on the legacy?
New products. New products.
Okay. And is there a plan to move some of those old legacy products to the new platform? What's your strategy longer term then to eventually eliminate that legacy?
Yeah, so there's several strategies we're working on to deal with that. So one of my key challenges this year is to reduce that, what I call cost per policy, and to reduce that legacy footprint. So there's a number of scenarios we're working on right now to do that. Because I don't want, we've got to move the organisation forward. So it's tough. It is very tough, and I'm sure many people on this call today are dealing with that. They might have 4 or 5. I've seen some organisations have got 20 plus policy administration systems that have inherited through over the years, and it's a really tough problem to solve. Very tough. But what I'm trying to, I guess, my pitch is there is an alternative. Think about people who are coming behind you. Let's not give them that legacy that we've had to deal with. And think about architecture in a different way, design in a different way. And it's tough. It's tough for people to understand. But I think if you've been through this and you've been through legacy transformation, you know what it's like. And I think we've got to come out the other side of that. And AWS and eBaoTech give us that platform now. But it's not easy. I'll admit it's not easy. But it's worth it.
Well, we appreciate the time and implementing something in 6 weeks with your own team, right? And it sounds like a fairly new team that you hired to do this is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Any secrets of, you didn't go out and get some of the big consulting firms to help implement, right? You kind of did this internally. What drove that? Did you want ownership, or what was the reason for that?
I've done this multiple times, and I know what happens is that you're not building for the future, because you're never going to be able to keep consultants on board for a long period of time. What I wanted was for my guys to build the architecture, build the design, know the system inside out, and then you can progress. You can start refreshing your team. If you bring in a big consultancy firm, it becomes really difficult because there has to be a handover, and you've lost that intrinsic knowledge of how the application actually works as you try and do this. So, yes, it's easy. It's difficult, but it's for me, it's the right thing. I'm not saying you shouldn't use consultants, but what I'm saying is the core of that architecture design needs to be internal. You need to hire people, have people on board that really want to do this and really understand it. And where this came to light, and it's a powerful lesson for me. We've been through a lot in the last year, but as we find any issue in production, and we find any issue in UAT, it gets solved very, very quickly because you've got the people that know the system inside out. I've had experience in the past where even just logging it, I would probably say, if my guys were on the call, I would say no more than 2 hours. We've turned around any defect we found in UAT or in production. I've seen me with some traditional suppliers. It takes 2 hours to get the call logged and get someone to understand what the issue is. For me, that's the difference. That's the piece you're trying to get to. So
did you have to hire hundreds of people to manage this, or what's your staff look like?
Right now, we're running just over 50.
Really?
And that's from devs, DevOps people, security people, testers, the full gambit.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, well, we appreciate your story and your ability and your willingness to share with the rest of the community out there. So thank you for that. It seems like AWS was a big part. Are you just using your own policy administration, or are you using InsureMO to do some of the PAS work?
So we're using InsureMO to be the core engine, and we've built all the business processes around it. So we've used a very thin slice of what InsureMO gives, because we want to build those core services. But I think that goes to prove the architecture, and it shows you that InsureMO gives you that flexibility to use what it is you want to use. So we use the core product part of InsureMO, and then we've built the business processes around it.
Okay, thank you. So that was from Sushil Menon. So I appreciate it. I think we have another question in here, or all right. So question for Dougie again. You're the main excitement around here, Dougie. What are the challenges that you faced while implementation that one should take care of in advance?
Oh, good question. So I think is the for us it was obviously having the right people with the right experience is a good starting point, and then as you start to launch, you've got to make sure that you really understand that whole DevOps pipeline. That was absolutely critical to us.
Yeah.
One of the key things that we've got to is we have no downtime deployments, so we can deploy any microservice at any point in time, and we don't have to take the production down. So that's a really key piece to us. So I think if you look back at a lot of legacy platforms, I've seen some companies that have got quarterly releases or bi-weekly releases. We can release at any point, at any time, and rollback's very simple. We don't have to use rollback. So it's trying to think of that whole cycle. It's not just about the core platform, it's how you're going to administrate it, how you're going to worry about your DevOps cycles, how you're going to worry about production support, etc. And you've got to move to being, from a production support perspective, you have to move from being reactive to being proactive by putting all the right alarms in place so that it becomes much easier for us to maintain the system. I guess what I'm saying is you have to think about the whole thing holistically, not just the architecture, but how you're going to run and deploy the whole infrastructure and the architecture. Really important.
So we're in the monolithic days, right? In which I came from, right? We all almost faced as much effort to upgrade a platform than to implement to deploy it, right? So you're avoiding these upgrades now, right? And how do you do that in a new microservices world to avoid upgrades?
So you're still upgrading, you're still moving forwards. As I said to you, is that we're now deploying some of those microservices. We started off, all microservices were in Java. We've moved to different versions of Java. Now we're moving to Kotlin. So because they're individually deployed, individually serviceable, you can use the latest technology, and it's a gradual evolution as you go forward. And again, using AWS, you just keep moving with the new technology that comes out. I think, as Ralph says, 175 services. I think when we started, there was much less, and now those services are coming on board that helps us do other things. So it's a complete evolution. And I think one of the key things is you have to keep investing in that evolution. You have to keep investing in how you can move forward.
Okay, interesting. Here's one.